All right. We should be live in effect, and I think we are. Let's see who we got out here. If you're out there in the audience tonight, you guys know the routine by now. Could you chime in and let us know you're with us, just like this beautiful lady, Miss Margaret Nick does. Our number one stunner, we call her. Margaret's just so awesome.
Welcome, Margaret. Welcome to the show. Good evening to you as well. Welcome, Kenny Adams. How you doing, brother? Welcome, Sophia Mimi Lee. What's up, baby? How you doing?
It's a great show lined up, ladies and gentlemen. A very great show tonight. We are honored and we're proud to have a local legend on with us tonight. It's going to be filled with facts and information. Grab the children. Remember how I used to do the radio way back in the day? Grab your children around the radio.
Grab a pen and a pad.
Want to welcome Gladys Young. Want to welcome Melody Butler. Want to welcome Margaret Nick. Want to welcome Darlene Collins. Want to welcome all of Kenny Adams and so many others who have jumped on board. We're so glad to have you with us. You guys are so loyal, and as my brother just said, we got another hot show tonight, man. We always aim to be not only informative but entertaining at the same time. And tonight, our guest is going to bring it like only he can. So we're looking forward to that, and we're going to introduce him in just a few minutes.
Yep.
Vonda, how you doing, Vonda? Linda Tongue, how are you? Orlando Lodi, how you doing? You guys are popping in here tonight.
Hey.
I'm so glad y'all on tonight because this is going to be an education and just a wealth of information, man. When you get somebody like this, our guest tonight, man, you just really want to dive in and listen, man, and learn and stories that he's going to tell you that you need to pass on to the children. I can tell you that much.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Pamela Smith, welcome to the show. Linda Tongue, welcome. Ronald Harris, welcome to the show.
Ronald Harris. Peace, brother.
Ronald Harris, come in.
All right. We're going to get this thing moving because we got a lot to cover tonight.
Yes, sir.
Join the valiant Knight brothers, Sir Adam, Sir Leonard, and Sir Equivian, as they embark on a noble quest to spread the word about the benefits of intermittent fasting. As modern-day warriors on a mission to promote health, wellness, and longevity, they will share their wisdom, tips, to help viewers conquer their own personal health.
Welcome to the Knight Brothers Intermittent Fasting Show. We are live every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Our show covers subjects related to fasting, dieting, nutrition, exercising, health, fun, and even social topics. So plug us into your weekly schedule, invite a friend, and
All right, Q.
Sir, we are live and in living color again tonight. Welcome everybody to the Knight Brothers Intermittent Fasting Show. We're so glad to have you on board with us. And as we said previously, we're gonna have a good time tonight, guys. So let's get, Lanny, with that being said, let's get ready to rumble.
We are. I just want to let folks know that also, if for some reason you don't have Facebook in front of you, or you just want to watch the show live on YouTube, if you go to that channel right there, it says Knight Brothers Show. It's live on YouTube, and also value-added information is on YouTube. We put a lot of other information that we don't put on Facebook that's on the YouTube channel. So you want to go subscribe to that channel. It will greatly help the show. And at the same time, you'll get some additional facts that you don't normally see on Facebook. Facebook's have a couple rules that you can't do some things on. So we definitely live on YouTube, and it's rebroadcast on there as well. So with that being said, we're going to keep it moving.
Let's get happy.
Vince Leggett is the founder of Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation. This individual has an extensive background in education planning and administration, as well as urban planning and community development. Here are only a few of Leggett's esteemed accomplishments. With a master's degree in public administration from Central Michigan University and additional coursework in executive leadership and minority environmental leadership development, Leggett has held several prominent roles in public service. He has served as CEO of the Housing Commission of Arundel County, Division Chief at the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and Executive Director of the Housing Authority City of Annapolis. He has also worked in education planning at both Baltimore City Public Schools and an Arundel County Public Schools, and in campus planning and student services at an Arundel Community College. So get ready for an informative voyage across the Chesapeake as the Knight Brothers is proud to welcome back Vincent Leggett to the show.
All right, y'all. Vincent Leggett, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Hey, good to have you, brother. Good to have you.
Great to have you here, brethren. Indeed.
Hey, guys, we want you to give out, you know what we actually do. We want you to give our guest Vincent Leggett a round. Welcome. Tell everybody say hello to Vince, or type of one in the chat box and say hello, Vince. You guys welcome, Vince.
One
Yes,
love.
Thank you, Mimi, for welcoming Vince. Anybody else out there want to
Appreciate
just give our guest a nice welcome?
Monica Butler. Thank you.
So Vince, how you been? How you been since we last had you on the show, sir?
I'll be close.
Well, life has been good, and I just want to shout out to you, Lenny, and Cravey and Arden. I would say I've been doing the Madison. I might date some of y'all, but I don't know if y'all remember the Madison or not. It was two up, one back, and a big boss turn. So I'll just say I've been doing the Madison since the last time. And two up and one back is a net 1+. Because I guess in the world that I operate in, I get more no's than I get yeses. Because I've been trying to tell a hard story against some hard bark people, talking about the roles that African Americans played on the Bay. And just so often when you pick up books in the library or colleges, you don't see us. And now all of a sudden, Mr. Leggett is saying we're everywhere. We've been hidden in plain sight. So in some corners, that's a tough story to move up the leaderboard.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's right.
Well,
But
man,
keep making progress. Keep making the progress. Want to welcome Darlene Collins. Want to welcome Charlene Curtis Adams. Want to welcome Carla Clark Owens. Want to welcome Deirdre Henson. Want to welcome Robert and Kimberly Clark. Linda Tung. You guys just keep coming in. Come on in the door, y'all. Come on, let's have some fun tonight.
Peace and love.
so awesome. So
Thank you for welcoming.
So Vince, we're gonna have you join in all segments of the show tonight. So we're gonna have some fun with this and educate at the same time. All right.
All right.
All right. Make sure I got my screen right.
It's the Knight Brothers Intermittent Fasting Show. Thank you for checking us out, because you know where this is. It's where healthy is the new sexy, baby. So we're going to keep it moving and keep you moving. So we're going to move together. So please share your comments, questions, anything. Put it in the chat box so we can put it right on the screen. Definitely join us. And join us also on Facebook and YouTube also. Just a heads up. And on YouTube, it's the Knight Brothers Show. The Knight Brothers Show on YouTube. What's up, Soul?
No, we had a good information about black seed oil, so I'm gonna drop the ad in here so people can tell them. But tell them a little bit about why you love black seed oil.
Well, it was funny. A long time ago, somebody said, man, you know, it's good for everything besides death. So I don't plan on dying right now, and I'm not dead, so I'm going to use it. But it's just so much that it works for. It can work internally, externally. It's good for pretty much all systems that you have in your body, whether it's your cardiovascular to your lymphatic system. It just does the body good, so to speak.
All right, well, let's check it
we're
out.
We're going to break down. Matter of fact, what I would say, I would advise you to go back and check out last week's show, because we really go down in detail, literally in reference to what it does.
The Knight Brothers Show promotes black seed oil, the perfect addition to your daily health routine. Black seed oil and pills are made with high-quality pure seeds and is 100% natural cold-pressed and unrefined. Packed with anti-inflammatory properties and more, black seed oil helps the immune system, weight control, healthy skin, hair, and improve overall well-being. Buying from our Amazon link helps the growth and success of the show, allowing us to bring you informative and entertaining content. Don't wait, start improving your health today. Order from the Knight Brothers Amazon link and experience the many benefits of black seed oil.
All right,
All
welcome
right.
to Queen. Let's go.
It's that time again. Yes, it's time for Aquavian to open the Knight Brothers Bar and bring you a great menu of tasty libations and show topics. So go ahead, Aquavian Knight, Mr. Bartender, Mr. Fast Master himself, and tell everyone what's on tap tonight.
Well, thank you very much, statistician. And as you said, there's a couple of down a little, please.
Okay, I gotta get you on the screen too, because I only have you populated, brother. How about there you go?
There you go. And he slides in the home plate.
There you go. There you go. Well, we have a couple of tasty beverages on tap tonight, and guys, we're going to just jump right into it. Tasty beverage number one. And in our socially speaking segment, we're going to look at something that's very intriguing. We're going to look at the historical look at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. As the Chesapeake Bay Bridge is about to turn 59 years old this month, guys. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge has been around for 59 years. We're going to cover that. And then in tasty beverage number two is going to be our feature segment. Our interview with Mr. Vince Leggett, the Admiral of the Bay, founder of Blacks of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And we have a lot to cover with him as we cover various topics about the Bay and other water tributaries as we go forward. So back to you, Len.
All right, my brother. Thank you. Socially speaking on tap. Mimi said she was thirsty.
Oh, yeah. The drink's on tap.
All right. Vonda said,
Right.
what Vonda said? Oh, wow. And then Vonda said, I will be getting it. I guess she's talking about the black seed oils. Definitely get that black seed oil. Black seed oil is powerful, y'all.
Yeah.
Absolutely powerful. And then
Keep it moving.
Vonda said we're showing off. So I just want to get a couple comments up in here tonight. All right. So tonight, look, we want to take a historical look at the Chesapeake Bay crossings. Now, Chesapeake Bay has a bridge as well as a tunnel in certain aspects across the channel. And we want to take a look at that because I think over the years, after 59 years, and it turns 59 years this month, I just want to know, are we taking it for granted? Because we're going to take a look back at what it was beforehand and what really happened. And some statistical facts is that it was 4.3 miles long, constructed back in 1949. Took 3 years to build, cost $45 million back then, which is $400 million in today's money. Over 27,000 vehicles cross it daily, and it has a maximum clearance of 186 feet underneath for boats to go through. So it's not a drawbridge situation. So, and we just want to know, has this marvel transformed the state's economy, lifestyle, natural resources, and commerce over here? We have an expert on here tonight to really help us to take a look at that. So we're going to take a quick look at a video, and then we're going to dive all into the Chesapeake Bay, y'all.
Turns 59 years old in April. When the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel first opened in 1964, it changed everything. With a look back and a peek ahead, here's Philip Townsend.
It's easy just to sit back and enjoy the ride today. But crossing the Chesapeake Bay wasn't always this simple. You're looking at footage recently dug up from around 1955. This is the SS Pocahontas, a 2-steam engine ferry hauling people from Little Creek to the eastern shore. That was 10 years before our modern marvel. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel changed everything in 1964. Shore to shore, 17 miles of bridge and tunnel, now giving us a quick ride to the shore. Since its opening, more than 130 million vehicles have used it. The $450 million investment also made those once majestic ferries obsolete. Going back to the early 1930s to the mid-50s, a private corporation controlled those ferries. Each vessel would haul 50 to 60 cars at a time. It would take about an hour and a half to get you across to the shore, and that's with perfect conditions. And today, the trip is getting even better. New construction on a second tunnel closer to the Virginia Beach side, that started in 2017. The project to bring 2 additional lanes for southbound traffic was supposed to be completed in 2022, but issues with the granite boulders originally used to build the structure pushed the project back 5 years. As it stands now, don't expect the new tunnel project to wrap up until 2027. For 13 News Now, I'm Philip Townsend.
All right, y'all, let's talk
The new
about
tunnel's
that. Let's
cost
talk
is more
about
than
that.
700.
Thank you, Philip, and Channel, whatever you was, for letting us jack you for a couple of minutes. But so Vincent, we want to talk all about the Chesapeake, and my brother's going to start off with your first question.
Yeah, Vince, as we talk about and think about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, could you break down the history of the travel to and from the Eastern Shore prior to the bridge and the tunnels being built, what it was like for people? They touched on it briefly, but if you could go more in depth about what it was like prior to the Bay Bridge span being built, how people got back and forth on the other side of the bridge.
Well, I like this opening, but what I would say is before I talk about the bridge, let me talk about the bay and give your audiences a few fun facts. One thing I want you to all understand that the bay is 200 miles long from the stem to the stern, from the front to the back. As the Atlantic Ocean comes into the Chesapeake Bay through Cape Henry and Cape Charles, and when people hear a town or port that they know, just tap into the chat box, yes, I've heard of it, because it's going down Route 13 on the Eastern Shore. Part of the film that you saw, if you're familiar with UMES, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, that's going down Route 13. And when you keep on down 13, you'll get to Cape Charles. It's a popular resort town now with Jack Nicklaus golf courses.
Wow.
But back in the day, those were watermen villages in Cape Charles, Virginia. And so you go on that Cape 17-mile span, part of it is bridge and part of it is tunnel, and you come up at Hampton Roads, Newport News, Virginia Beach, Jazz Festival. And so I just want to give you an orientation. When we talk about the Bay Bridge Tunnel, that is the bridge that comes out of Salisbury down by UMES on the Eastern Shore. And then you go across the bay on the lower part of the bay, and that's where the ocean comes into the bay. So that's one point. Now let's go up to Naptown, to Annapolis, where that is the bridge that started in 1952 under Governor McKeldin at the time, and it's a 4-mile span. But one fact is it's one of the longest suspension bridges in the world. That even the drawings that you see in the film footage, that middle span doesn't have any supports. If you look on the lower part of your screen, you see pilings coming up, leading up to the center span, and that's known as a suspension bridge, and there's no pilings. Sometimes people ask, well, Mr. Vincent, why does the Bay Bridge curve such? because there is a 50-foot channel that comes up to the middle of the bay under that bridge, and it has to be perpendicular to the shores. And so you have tankers coming from all over the world bringing in automobile parts from Japan, Toyota, or bringing parts into the General Motors plant in Baltimore, bringing in spices to McCormick Spice, Old Bay, bringing in products from Caribbean and Jamaica and Africa, Domino Sugar. These are all different businesses that are Chesapeake Bay based. So often when I go to the legislature advocating for resources for the Bay, the senators and delegates say, go away, this is a greenie issue. You're down here talking about fish and saving trees, when they look at the issues in Baltimore City or Prince George's County and say equal justice of the law is the cause we get. Education are the cause we get. Healthcare are the cause we get. And you're down here trying to get an audience talking about the Chesapeake Bay. So what I do, I frame up the Bay as an economic engine. This Chesapeake Bay is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Tell it, brother, tell it.
Not many people that look like us around the table. And whether I'm talking to young kids up on Martin Luther King Boulevard or talking to postgraduate, postdoctorate at Morgan, Hampton, Virginia Union, Coppin, UMES that have 2 master's degrees and speaking 6 languages, they can't find the on-ramp either. So it's not because we don't have the intellect to understand, but it's a tricky game and we call it the Bay game. And for the last 3 years that I have crafted myself as somebody that worked with every alphabet group on the Chesapeake Bay. I worked with 5 governors. And I talk about the other Chesapeake. Philip Brown talked about the other Annapolis. Well, I've elevated, and I talk about the black side of the Bay, the other Chesapeake, and the part of the Chesapeake that's not in the history books. But our African-American men and women have been involved in all aspects of the industry. And so again, when we talk about your initial question, pre-bridge, post-bridge, you had to go all the way up to Cecil County on the eastern shore. And this is a fun fact, and we should give out prizes at the end for people paying attention to this lecture. The one county that is on both sides of the Chesapeake Bay is Cecil County.
Okay.
It's one county in Maryland. And you might hear a place called Chesapeake, and their bridges. And so part of Cecil County is on the eastern shore and the western shore, because when the Bay Bridge shuts down because of storms or security, you have to go all the way up 95, all the way up Route 40, cross over through Cecil County, and then come down the backside like you're coming from Wilmington, Delaware, and you hit places like Chestertown and Centerville and Queenstown. And so prior to the Bay Bridge, that is the way that automobiles moved.
Wow.
With the ferries that you saw,
wow.
And they had ferries that came right into City Dock. Mattapique Ferry came right over to Kent Island. And again, African Americans were working on the boats, and involved in all aspects of the industry.
Wow. Look, Vince, you done covered a couple of questions, man. You're amazing. But talk about the impact on lifestyle, like migration, like the demographics on the eastern shore versus on the Annapolis side of the bridge, and how that diversity changed over the years. Like, did people start moving from Annapolis side over to the eastern shore? Did you see the demographics change, and what was that like, and how has that affected things?
Well, one thing I would say is the Eastern Shore has always been agriculturally based. Let's just start right there. It's flat land, and you almost have to get up on a ladder to see a hill. I mean, you get over to Kent Island across the bridge, and it might be a couple of molehills, but you'll never see a mountain. I mean, it's flat. Yeah. You get all the way out to Ocean City, then it starts diving, or if you go down UMES, Salisbury, Cambridge, it falls that way, and it was agriculturally based. you also need to realize that Maryland is a border state. Half of it was for the Union in the Civil War, the other half was for the Confederates. So you had the bars and stars, and you had the stars and the stripes. And so the Eastern Shore has always been agriculturally based. And in some of my research, they call that up south, where Mississippi, Alabama may be down south, but that Maryland Eastern Shore is up south. And then you have the Mason-Dixon line, where Delaware comes in, where Maryland comes in, and part was free and part was enslaved. And that is the character of our great state of Maryland. Historically, it was a border state. It went both ways. But tobacco was king in the beginning, and everything traveled by water through Cape Charles and Cape Henry. I'm going back to lesson number 1 on when the Atlantic Ocean comes into the Chesapeake Bay. It is Cape Charles and Cape Henry, and everything traveled by water, cargo and our enslaved ancestors. Frederick Douglass said that this Chesapeake Bay has been a water of despair and a water of hope. Did y'all hear that, audience? This Chesapeake Bay, Frederick Douglass said, has been a water of despair because his ancestors came up in the hold of a ship.
Wow.
But it's also been a water of hope because the Chesapeake Bay is also a gateway to freedom. As I study Harriet Tubman and others, the watermen, black and white, Quakers, abolitionists, used this bay as a gateway to freedom. And my signature research project is called Chesapeake Underground. And again, showing what extent watermen used their vessels. And even in the 1830s, the Maryland General Assembly, that is the state house right here in capital city Annapolis, had a bill on the floor that passed in 1834 that said African Americans could not be on certain size boats, free or enslaved, on certain bodies of water because they were using these boats to help runaways get out of here.
Wow.
And so again, I'm not talking about he say, she say. I'm talking about documents in the legislative services, in the Hall of Records, and I have the bills right on my desk now that I read every now and then to make sure I tell the story straight.
Man, y'all got, look, drop a 1 in the chat group if you are, first of all, thankful of this brother's knowledge and just blown away like I am by it's just a walking textbook of information about our state, about the region, and bringing facts on how it affects our culture at the same time. Q, why don't you transition to the next question?
First of all, Vince, I want to say you're dropping knowledge bombs all over the place tonight, man. I appreciate that. The audience appreciates that. And as we move forward, we want to talk about the future concerns that the state may have as the bridge continue to age, and also meeting additional traffic and safety concerns as the bridge needs repairs, etc. What do you think is the future of the Bay as far as the bridges are concerned? We're talking about the local bridges moving forward, and how will the state handle that?
Well, one thing I would say is that we have the 2 crossings. One is Annapolis to Kent Island. That's the one we're more familiar with. And then also from Cape Charles in the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, Newport News. And so those are the 2 places where the Bay crosses at. But due to increased traffic and so forth, there have been debates since 1970 that we need another span of the bridge. And so that debate is going to continue to go back and forth. I heard some numbers about the cost of the bridge back in 1952 versus what that translates in today's dollars. And again, it's a very expensive proposition, but I think that they are ongoing conversations. I'm part of one group working with U.S. Senator Van Hollen, Congressman Sarbanes, John Sarbanes, Senator Cardin, and other groups to have the Chesapeake Bay identified as a national recreation area. as a unit of the Park Service to continue to be an economic engine, but to tell a more complete story about everyone's history and heritage on
now,
the bay.
Will that bring money in when you're talking to these legislators at the federal and the state level by getting that classification for the Chesapeake Bay? Will that bring dollars to the state of Maryland, resources?
Yes, because so often I was on a game show one day and they wanted people to name famous bridges. And I want the audience to get the ink pens out. That some said the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, we all, as kids, we learned about the Brooklyn Bridge. And then we hear about the Golden Gate Bridge out in San Francisco, from San Francisco over to Oakland. And then, Lord knows, we heard about the London Bridge. Well, I raised both hands. What about the Chesapeake Bay Bridge? Because Chesapeake Bay Bridge spans the largest estuary. This is a big word, I'll say it twice. Chesapeake Bay is the largest estuary in North America.
Break that down for us. What does that mean for the audience?
Estuary is where salt water comes from the Atlantic Ocean. I'm laying building blocks, stick with me. That same Cape Henry and Cape Charles down Hampton Roads is where the Atlantic Ocean comes into the Chesapeake Bay. If you go to the upper bay, Susquehanna River, Havre de Grace, North Bay, coming Port Deposit, maybe names people have heard of. That is fresh water coming as far north as Cooperstown, New York, where the Little League World Series are played at for you baseball fans. Cooperstown. And the water starts there, runs down to Susquehanna, and comes into the Chesapeake Bay. So that's the 200-mile stretch from the top of the bay down to Hampton Roads, Newport News area. And so, yes, it's an economic engine, it's an economic impact. Every time I see the new governor, Moore, I just say Chesapeake Bay, Chesapeake Bay. I don't say hi, I don't say bye, I don't ask you how your mama doing, how your kids doing, because when he see me, I want him to see Chesapeake Bay, and I want him to see an African American that has a 30-year history advocating for the Bay. And so when you're looking around, building out your team, and you want feedback and input, that I'm not the only voice, but I have a record of being a voice on the Bay.
Amen. Amen. Well, Vince, look, we got a lot more to cover, man. I swear, you dropped some of the balls. We could stop the show right here. But we got a lot more to cover, so we're going to keep it moving, all right?
All right.
Wait, there's more.
So the question was asked earlier in the last segment about, I missed the beginning of the show. I forgot who asked it. Said, what is the show about? Well, tonight's show is feature interview with special guest Vince Leggett. He is the founder of Blacks of the Chesapeake. He's been decorated and awarded for his lifelong service to the area and to this mission in and around the Chesapeake area. He's a walking textbooks of knowledge about the state of Maryland and surrounding areas. And we want to take a look at this quick video, and then we're going to dive into some questions with no other than the man, the legend, Vincent Leggett.
Men of African descent have had a relationship with the waters of the Chesapeake Bay since the arrival of indentured servants in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. Black watermen have enhanced maritime navigation and trade on the Chesapeake Bay during some of the most critical times in our nation's history. Nicknamed Black Jacks, these men worked as equals alongside whites while on the water. Indeed, an 1836 law that attempted to restrict black labor on the water was largely ignored by white captains and watermen. Keeping up with that change is Vince Leggett, founder of the Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation, who works to capture the stories of African Americans in the Chesapeake region. Leggett is a historian, writer, and cultural geographer of African American legacy and heritage of the Chesapeake Bay, and a 2003 awardee of the Admiral of the Chesapeake Bay. What I have found is, from an African American perspective, is that exposure is a big part of it, he said. I think for men like Captain Meredith and Captain Woolley to stay on the bay, they need to find different ways to make it work. They use their 30 and 40 years and multiple generations of insights of tides and waves to take care of their families, and their grandkids to show a way to stay on the water because the day they quit, we're closed. Leggett then spoke on the topic of environmental stewardship in the African American community with a specific connection to open waters, stressing the importance of merging STEM and STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, education with cultural relevance for youth. He also said it is imperative to have more African Americans and African American organizations serve on executive boards of maritime organizations. Serving on executive boards and halls of government will ensure that more African Americans are aware of the available resources and decision-making processes to fill economic and cultural gaps.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So look, we're going to start off with the first round of questions tonight, talking about just the whole Blacks of the Chesapeake area. Vincent, we want to talk about the role of the black watermen. They call them blackjacks in the videos of the Chesapeake. And Q is going to start off with the first question. Oh, Arden is. I'm sorry.
Well, he just asked, but that's all right. Who were the blackjacks, the watermen of the Chesapeakes, and what were their roles, techniques, the regions they worked in, and how did they affect the local economy?
Well, one thing I'll just say, let me just start with the whole concept of the blackjacks. That the 30 years I've been up and down the bay, from the shallow end of the bay to the deep end of the bay, what people call themselves is through self-identification. That if we walk into a boat, walk into a 7-Eleven, walk into a giant supermarket and say, I want everybody that's a blackjack to raise your hand, I don't know how many hands are going to go up. But if you say, I want people that fish for pleasure, fish commercially, raise your hand. If I say who describes themselves as a waterman or an oysterman, so what I would say is in certain sections of this bay, you could go right down to the dock, see boat captains, and say, I want all blackjacks to step forward. I'm not sure who's going to take a step forward. If I say I want all the captains to come forward, I want the crabbers to come forward, I want the watermen to come forward. And so just here's how I say it, that part of African Americans empowering themselves is we have to be in a position that we identify who we are versus systems with names and handles on us.
Okay, powerful.
So follow that, just
Powerful.
an audience.
Oh, without question. Without question.
Vince, we had a question from the audience just now.
Okay.
Miss Vonda Franklin asks, Mr. Vince, what made you want to learn about the Bay?
What I would say is that on the opening slide, you saw me standing in front of the East Baltimore Historical Library. And that's over near John Hopkins Hospital, Clifton Park, just as a reference point to you. And I describe myself as a country boy out of East Baltimore. And then once y'all chuckle and the audience chuckle and say, ain't nothing country in East Baltimore, I say, here I am. Because in the 50s, my parents migrated from North Carolina. My mom from the Rocky Mount area. If these are any of your towns, just tap the chat. And my dad came from below Fayetteville, 86 Airborne, Fort Bragg, down on the South Carolina border. And both of them were trained in elementary education but my dad could not make money as a school teacher. His first assignment was down in Red Clay, Georgia, and he couldn't wait to get out of Red Clay, Georgia. Grabbed my mother, and they came to Baltimore and moved into Cherry Hill. And the Cherry Hill back in the 50s was uptown. I mean, that may not be the Cherry Hill you see in today's news cycle, but every summer they would ship us back down the country. My older brother Malcolm, my two younger sisters Lisa and Belinda. So I grew up picking cotton in the tobacco field, shaking peanuts, hunting, fishing, and so that gave me an early land-based experience.
Yes.
In addition, in the 50s, we lived at Harford and 25th Street on the east side. And in the 50s, this was still an integrated community. And in this community, we had front porches and back porches where we weren't in 27-story high-rises. Yes. Over Murphy Home or Flag Court. And so a white lady lived next to us on our street. And she introduced me to National Geographic magazines.
Okay.
She would hand them over the front porch, 20 of them stacked together, tied together with string. And then she introduced me to raisin bread. I'd never heard of the stuff before. We were walking up on North Avenue buying day-old bread and was glad to get it because it was on discount. But I'm down in the basement reading National Geographic, eating raisin bread. I thought I was a prince. Can you imagine going on Nat Geo and raisin bread up in the hood?
Oh, man.
But I traveled around the world through National Geographic magazine.
Wow.
Where I saw animals and landscape and all colors and cultures of people. And in elementary school, I would cut those pictures out and win all of the bulletin board contests. I would throw in a little jet, a little Beauty of the Week from Jet, little Afro, little Ebony, mix it in. Hey, look, mix it in with Nat Geo so the boys on the strip wouldn't think I flipped.
Right.
So I had a couple of the week in there. Hey, look, I was politicking a long time. And I would win all the bulletin board contests. But I'm talking about exposure. I'm talking about exposing and being exposed that there's more to life than your hand in front of you. And I think that is the key, exposure. And what that did do was, one, that early land-based experience, two, National Geographic and raisin bread really set me on a trajectory. And I would still go up on the strip and figure out who was in charge and make myself their special assistant. I was with the top pool player, top politician, top preacher, top golfer. I would go up there and see who's running this rat trap and make myself a special assistant, because this is what I learned from my granddad, Arthur Smith. Good help is hard to find. It always have been and always will be. So Vince, make yourself good help, because the system protects good help. Let me say this again. Even in your businesses and in your endeavors, you're gonna give good help a break. Yeah, how many times your car gonna break down? How many grandmother funerals you gonna been to? We up to 8 already. But if they deliver, hear me out. If they deliver for you, you're gonna give them a little slack. But deadbeats can't get nothing right. Contrary, one more time, you're out of here. Don't even come to the office. Go out the first exit you see. Don't even come up to the office because you want a last chance agreement. And so I've always tried to fashion myself as being good help.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
As we transition move forward, we still are delving into those black watermen. And what were some of the challenges they faced during the Jim Crow era and trying to work and become a part of that trade? Tell us about what it was like for them during that time, if you would.
Well, one of the things, even going back to 1619. I mean, in 2019, we had the big celebration, whether it was Jamestown or Port Comfort, Virginia. It's debate is still out on where that first 20 landed at. And so at that time, African Americans, slave or free, were already on the water. When they came across the Atlantic in the whole of the boats after 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade, it became very specialized. They wasn't putting in order saying, I need 20 black guys. No, they said, I need 20 people that know about herdsmen, that know about cattle. I need 20 that know about growing cotton. I need 20 that know about raising peanuts. I need 20 that know about maritime trades. And so they began to recruit us based on what was needed. And you already done jumped ahead of me. Chesapeake Bay, crabbing, oysters, boat, navigation, aid to navigation. We came to these shores with those skills. And as my daddy says, people hunt and fish for sport. I mean, they want to have an elephant head up on the wall. They want to have some stuffed deep ducks over top of the fireplace. We were hunting and fishing for the pot. Yes. And look, if we don't bring them home, we ain't eating tonight. So we weren't out there playing. And look, we was getting with it, as people say. We were getting with it. And so that means that we had to be more craftful, more resourceful. And every military campaign that's happened on the Chesapeake Bay, from Francis Scott Key's Star Spangled Banner to the War of 1812, to the Civil War, people of color, African Americans, always been recruited because we were on these waters to get something to sell, but something to feed our families. And we served as pilots on the Chesapeake Bay, and not airplane pilots, but people that knew how to navigate the sandbars and the shoals and the wind and the waves. And so again, we're talking about what was it like. Even as I told you and was reinforced in the documentary film, in the 1830s, they put a bill in the General Assembly right up the hill from you guys that said, I don't want to see African Americans on these boats without a white on it, because they are using these boats to help people escape.
Oh,
And
wow.
And so, again, as I interviewed the watermen, this is what I would say, is that out on that bay, if you fall overboard, you don't care whether the person's black or white to throw you the lifeline. You just thank you, Jesus.
There you go, brother.
There
you go. Well, look, Vince, we want to transition into the next segment because it's another rich history and heritage about the Annapolis shores of Carr's Beach and Sparrows. So we want to take a quick look at a video, and then we're going to dive into some questions related to that.
Okay.
When I was growing up, Ocean City was segregated. I remember being in the water and there was a rope there with balls on it, and you knew that you couldn't go beyond the rope because on the other side of the rope was the white area.
And it was just something about whether it's the water fountains, the beach, the playgrounds, the libraries, the schools, there's something very humiliating about seeing the white-only sign or the colored-only sign.
I was probably 8 years old. I didn't know that I couldn't go to these other places.
There was a recent movie called The Green Book that kind of outlined a lot of these different facilities where it was safe for people of color to go. Well, Carr's and Sparrows Beach were one of those places. Here was the 1930s. You had two African-American females that owned acreage on the Chesapeake Bay.
It was a source of confidence and empowerment. It's history that many of our people haven't seen.
To see African Americans prevailing against all odds, being educated, business people, hiring people, adding to the tax rolls. They hired many of the local school teachers during this period of segregation where colored teachers were paid less than white teachers.
Carr's Beach was not a confined environment, so it had the air of a festival. So people felt free.
The slogan was black feet and white sand. I mean, that was just so empowering. And no one could tell you to sit down or stand up. You could just come out and enjoy the Chesapeake Bay, enjoy the music, enjoy the food, enjoy the fellowship.
Some of the entertainers that came to Carr's Beach at that time were like Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, Chick Webb, Duke Ellington,
Ray Charles, James Brown, Sarah Vaughan.
Just to see people of color in charge, running something, was just very empowering to a downtrodden people.
I do feel a little sad that some of these beaches no longer exist, and I understand why, because when integration came, we decided to test all the things that we couldn't go to. They played such an important role, and as long as we don't forget that they existed, we've had some hard times, but we are survivors.
Even with all of those obstacles, as a community, African Americans found ways to prevail, how to strive, how to empower others, how to maximize opportunity. And so I think that message is just as relevant today as it was in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s.
Awesome information. Well, we're going to dive right into it. You know how we do.
Yes,
so, Q, I think you up first, brother. Go ahead.
Vince, that was a very interesting video, and let's just dive a little deeper into it, and let's explore the Carr's and Sparrows Beach past history, the importance and the stories and the heritage. We'll start with the local attractions and the national draw from musical and entertainers at that time, in that period. If you just break down a little bit of that, if you would.
Well, where I'd like to start the story is 1902. 1902. It's going to be a quiz at the end. Mr. Fred Carr amassed 180 acres with frontage on the Chesapeake Bay in 1902. And I start the story there because just imagine an African American cobbling together 180 acres. And he had 4 daughters, a son, and in the 40s, they created 2 beaches. Ms. Elizabeth Carr opened up Carr's, and Mrs. Florence Carr Sparrows opened up Sparrows Beach. And one thing, both beaches had stars. At one point I was doing a talk and they made it clear, and I've seen the old globe posters that you might see that look like the boxing programs, the old globe posters that were in the barbershops and the laundromats and tacked on telephone poles. At Sparrows Beach, it said Sam Cooke and Ray Charles at Sparrows Beach. But you couldn't get 11,000 people to a James Brown show or 70,000 people at a Chuck Berry show in a Sparrows, because that became more family oriented and had a different business model. I'm talking about business models. Yeah, they had the church groups and the YMCAs and the swimming, and groups booked Sparrows. Carr's in the 40s, when Baltimore businessman, venture capitalists, with quotes, Little Willie Adams and his boys out of Baltimore. Hey, look, and I told y'all I went up on the strip to see who was in charge, and I was their special assistants. And so I was a young Turk up in Baltimore and was part of that political organization. You all might remember Mork Park Sausages, Mom, please. So that was Billy Adams and Ray Haysbert I mean, these were very progressive business people. And so they teamed up with the Carr family and those in the late 40s and early 50s and brought in the big pavilions and teamed up with Morris Blum and WANN Radio and Hoppy Adams, Bandstand on the Bay, and just elevated that whole operation where Cars and Sparrows became the mecca of music and entertainment in the Mid-Atlantic region. Let me say that again.
Yes. Yep.
Cars and Sparrows Beaches became the mecca of music and entertainment, and it was on what they called the Chitlin Circuit. And when I do lectures uptown or downtown, somebody will raise their hand and say, well, Mr. Leggett, you know, what do you mean by the Chitlin Circuit? And what I say is that many times the entertainers were playing for a pig foot and a bottle of wine.
Wow.
I mean, it was 25 cents to get into the beach. How much could a hot dog cost? And the Chitlin Circuit started up in New York, and then into Philly, and then into Wilmington, and then down to the Royal Theater in Baltimore. Tap the chat line if you know all these places. And from May to September, Cars and Sparrows Beach was where it's at. Then they'll go over to the Howard Theater in D.C. And then they'll go on down to Hampton Roads, Newport News, and on down to Atlantic Beach. And that was the Chitlin Circuit, but it also ran up the Mississippi River out of New Orleans, all the way up to Detroit and Chicago.
My goodness.
And so this was the Chitlin Circuit. And the Green Book was showing you where you could visit at, sleep at, eat at. Y'all saw that movie on the TV, some of you all. And what I say is that the Chitlin Circuit was the old Underground Railroad. Because when Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman was on the run, they had to know where was the safe houses at, who was user-friendly. And so what I say is that we need to have a 21st century network of like-minded, positive people trying to make a difference in our collective communities. And it's through partnerships and collaborations is the model that I think is the sustainable approach. So I'll just pause there and just see where you all want to go from there.
No, that was right on point. I mean, really, you know, because you kind of brought us to a point where, you know, you could see that excellence occurring, but what were the factors that led to the decline of these beaches and the destination locations, and how did that unfold over the years?
Well, one thing I would just say is wooden buildings on the seashore, salt air don't last. Let's just start right there. Wooden buildings on the seashore, salt air, it's a lot of maintenance and upkeep. So let's just start there. It sucks up money. The other thing is everybody, or during that era, wanted to go places where you couldn't go. I mean, you couldn't go to Bay Ridge. You could go to Ocean City after Labor Day. You went to Atlantic City, and they called it Chicken Bone Beach between Missouri Avenue, because when the black people left on Sunday, with so many chicken bones left on the beach, they started calling it Chicken Bone Beach.
So hold on. I gotta jump in.
What?
Hold on. You said when you black people couldn't go to Ocean City, they couldn't go here, they couldn't go there, but they had a spot in Atlantic City that was in between a couple different streets. Is that what you're saying?
Missouri Avenue.
How
the
about
sign is up.
Wow.
So the sign is still up?
It's a historical memorial marker. It's right outside the Atlantic City Convention Center where they had the Miss America pageants at. And now it's a jazz musical celebration. And as I talked about people naming people, so we took what they thought was a put down, Chicken Bone Beach. But for us, that's a statement of heritage. We ain't
Yes.
embarrassed because we ate chicken. We're not embarrassed because we ate chicken, and you can call it what you want, but it's our history and culture that we're celebrating. And they have an annual jazz festival up there. And so the question was, what led to the demise? One, people want to go where they couldn't go. Two, that as economics change, that the elders pass on, Mr. Fred Carr, and then his children, and then their children. They are doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, educated. And what I say is everybody's doorknob turns different. People can stand on the sideline and say, well, you shouldn't have sold, you shouldn't have did this, you shouldn't have did that. I mean, you can't spend other people's money.
Amen.
You can't make
Amen.
this. You can have your views, but truth be told, people can make decisions. The good news is they had assets that they can make decisions on.
Amen.
So often, our community, every generation starting from the get-go, no legacy wealth, nothing's been built up, nothing can be passed on. And how do you expect to prosper if generation after generation you at the get-go? And so that we need to speak truth to power, but also speak truth to ourselves. We need to do a paradigm shift. And I'll say that word again. And the work that you do about health and legacy, and health is just such a connector to wealth creation and legacy building. You guys are on the right track. You guys are the North Star of this Chesapeake Bay, and just keep shining that light up on the hill.
We appreciate that, brother. And look, we want to know, we want to shift to, because what they did is what they did back then, and it was great. They created a heritage. They created a history. And yes, it did.
Yes.
It did fall off for a little bit, but there are some great works on right now to restore, rebuild, revitalize with new tourism, new economies. Can you talk about some of these things? And I'm going to throw some pictures up on the screen as you talk about it. And can you tell folks what is going on in this era now?
Well, what I would say is 15 years there was 5 acres of land. You had Sparrows Beach, as I said, was more family oriented, but they also had stars. So don't get trapped in that. It was family oriented, but stars came to Sparrows too. Mm-hmm. And then you had Carr's Beach with the big pavilion. But in the 60s, the last show they had was Frank Zappa. He was a rocker out of Baltimore, because you can tell the history of American music right from that latitude and longitude. And so the final days was the Rockers. But part of became a wastewater treatment plant. I mean, I don't know if you know the term environmental justice or environmental injustice, however you want to say it. But if you're limited resource communities, it's a high probability the trash truck's going to park it outside your house at night. The landfills are going to be near you, the sewer treatment plants, the cancer alleys, the ABCs. And so 15 years ago, I was working with people trying to rescue this last 5 acre. Remember, we started with 180 and it was 5 left. Part of it became a wastewater treatment plant. The other became the villages of Chesapeake Harbor. That's what, and so I had the vision, but my money was short 15 years ago. Yes. In the last couple of years, a new constellation of players came together. The governor's office, Mayor Gavin, the Chesapeake Conservatives, the Conservation Fund, ABCD, and we were able to amass $6.4 million and brought the last 5 acres that was African-American owned part of that Carr property. And it's going to become the Elktonia Beach Heritage Park. This businessman, Little Willie Allen, and his guys had owned that last 5 acres. So we were able to buy that, and right now we have a trail down there, some signage. But my goal is to do 2 things there. One, to provide access to all people. It's not a black park. to provide
Yes.
access to all people to the Chesapeake Bay, particularly limited resource people. We live in a seaport town, and it's becoming more and more difficult to get to the sea in a seaport town.
Speak it,
right.
speak it, brother, speak it.
Look around. Between military use, government use, gated communities, A, B, C, D, long driveways that you better not drive down because you can't see the end of it. But also to celebrate African American history and culture on the Chesapeake Bay, starting with the Elktonians, the Cars, but we had Beechwood up on the Magathy was another African American complex when you might remember the old praying bands and camp meetings up at Mount Zion, Magathy. It was called Beechwood, and then you have Highland Beach and Arundel on the Bay and Oyster Harbor were African American enclaves, and then further down Shady Side and Columbia Beach. So there's a rich heritage of African American history up and down the coastline. Recently, I had guests come in from Chicago. I had guests fly in from North Hollywood, and once they told me they were North Hollywood, I knew they had money, and it didn't sound like South Central. So I knew that these were balls coming in town. To see what we're doing around African American land conservation. Let me say it again slowly. African American land conservation and heritage preservation. So Blacks of the Chesapeake and our partners are leading these efforts to preserve not only our land, but also our history and heritage. And that's what's happening down there. And more to come and more to happen.
That is so awesome. Look, Vince, I gotta jump in to tell you this, man. We got some very knowledgeable and loyal listeners and viewers to the show every week. And Miss Vonda Franklin said this, and this is, I think, is the highest compliment to you. She said, Lenny, this is one of the most knowledgeable shows I've ever seen on the Night Brothers show. I'm not saying that the other shows weren't, but I'm just saying for Vonda, it is the most knowledgeable. And I attribute that to you because we just over here in awe just as much as Vonda is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I just wanted to give you kudos on that. And Margaret Nick goes on to say this is definitely a very interesting show with much information, the depth of information to share. And thank you for coming from you, Vince. So look, Vince, we do want to segue because you got a couple good things that more information, and we were trying to get it all in while we have you on here. So, Q, won't you start us off on this next segment here?
Yes, Vince. Just quickly, as I know we want to cover another segment after this. But there's some fundraising events that you have going on for the Blacks of the Chesapeake and the Cars Beach restoration. If you could just touch on those, and we'll show people where to get more information about that as we move forward.
Well, a couple of quick things. One, I'm part of a trending documentary film on Frederick Douglass called Becoming Frederick Douglass and Visions of Harriet Tubman that's trending on PBS worldwide. And I'm one of the few subject matter experts and social commentators that are in both films because their life started on the Chesapeake Bay, Talbot County, Dorchester County, salt water running through their veins. And the producers reached out to me because people know the back end of their lives, they minimize the front end. So that's one thing. They can go to our website too. On April 17th, a new Black Waterman documentary film is coming on Maryland Public TV. You can find that on my website called Water's Edge, Black Waterman of the Chesapeake. And thank you for that. On April the 25th, we're having Cars Beach Night at the Beacon Restaurant. As I told you, the Sparrows and Cars, one became part of a wastewater treatment plant, and we need that. The other part became the Villages of Chesapeake Harbor. There used to be a restaurant called Sam's there back in the day. Well, now it's the Beacon Restaurant, and I'm having a Cars Beach Night. It's a ticketed event. It's a fundraiser to support our work. You can find that on the website. On June 26th, I know I look good, but I'm closer to 70 than 60. So on June 26th, hey, look, I'm having the 3rd annual Blacks of the Chesapeake Golf Open. 3rd annual, got players coming in from coast to coast throughout the DMV and Mid-Atlantic region. And we're celebrating local African-American golf pioneers, people like Hub Myron Green, Al Green, and those up Brownswoods, Marlboro Hill. And Janet Hayes, myself, Green family, Randy Rao, Kenyatta, and all of them have been rallying to have a to-be-built clubhouse named after Albert Green. Again, the first PGA professional golf pro at the course in the late 60s. So again, more information is on that. And we use this to support our scholarships and programs. And this all can be found on our web. And you guys are going to put the web link in the chat and so forth, and contact information. Yes.
Okay.
Those are some
Q, why don't you talk about the next segment?
Yes, sir. Well, now, what we're gonna do, Vince? Now we're gonna. Recently, we know that you did an awesome trip. You and your wife had a trip to Dakar, Senegal, and it was based around, once again, the water and boating. And we want you to break down that trip for us as we talk about your hands across the Atlantic to Annapolis from Senegal project. What was the significance of it, and what was its route? If you could just break down that, if you would.
Well, one thing here in Annapolis, Janet Hayes Williams has been a big proponent of historical port markers, sites of memory, and we go down there and we rub Alex Haley's head to all of the patinas coming off of that, and the Kunta Kinte story and what really happened at Annapolis City Dock. And yes, Kunta Kinte and others came into the Annapolis port, so Annapolis is officially designated as a port marker committee and as a site of memory. Well, and I served as Janice's vice chairman. And so Dakar, Senegal, Elmira, Castle, and Ghana, and other parts are where our enslaved ancestors came from, to Annapolis, to Charleston, to New Orleans, and so forth. And so a delegation came to Baltimore to see me, from Ethiopia, from Senegal, from Canada, and Denver, Colorado, that they built a boat in Dakar and they brought a model over for me to see. And their storyline is they've built a larger version of this Perot boat, which is a West African fishing boat, in Senegal, and their vision is to sail it from Dakar, Senegal, to Brazil, to Jamaica, and then up the Chesapeake Bay through that Cape Charles and Cape Henry, where I told you where the Atlantic Ocean comes on the Bay, and donated to Blacks of the Chesapeake, and that was in October 2022.
Wow.
And by January 2022, Dina and myself was in Dakar, Senegal, Gorée Island, door no return, and I sailed out on that boat down the Senegal River. So I'm talking about vision, God's favor, hard work, and I didn't go over as a high-ranking politico, nor did I go over as a tourist. I went over as a cultural attaché, and tell the people that's going to be on the quiz. What did Mr. Leggett go to Seneca as a cultural attaché specialized in maritime arts?
All right.
Y'all get that? Through United Nations, UNESCO, and State Department.
You went through the what?
That put me on a different, through the State Department, work with the U.S. embassies on both sides of the Atlantic. And so this is what I would say. When Dina and myself touched down in Senegal, Dakar, Senegal, I kissed the ground. When we got back to Dulles International Airport, I kissed the ground twice. Now, a lot went down between the dash. I'm trying to keep it real. Hey, look, you know how the old preachers used to talk about, we're going to preach about the dash. I don't want to hear when you was sunrise. I don't want to hear your sunset. We're going to talk about the dash. And so a little bit of time we have left, I'm going to speak to the dash. And what I would say, number one, is that in my mind, I had in my mind that I was going back to Africa. And what happened was I didn't go back to Africa, I went to Africa. That so often, you know, we say we want to go back to the homeland, back to this, back to that. That was not my lived experience. And so that switched up somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, that I wasn't going back to anywhere. It was a fresh experience. Language, they were speaking Wolof, they were speaking French. And so that's one part of it. When you say what was some of the impact, and I'm still processing it. The other part of it is I had my bride and my wife with me. Us guys might can figure it out, zigging and zagging, you know, we done had some experiences, but I'm a protector.
Yes.
Y'all need to hear
Yes.
me.
Yes, brother.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm a protector. And so when you got your bride with you, you got to flow a different kind of way.
Yes.
Y'all follow me a little bit?
Yes.
Don't know the language. If something pop off, I don't know which way to run. The best I know is a little bit of Pig Latin, but I don't know French or Wolof. You know, I can do a few old phase and try to fake it, but I had a sense of powerlessness. And I want to stay right there for a minute if y'all let me. And just talk about powerlessness. Because there were a few hot corners over there and a few intersections where that sense of powerlessness, this is man talk, real talk radio. This is real talk radio when I get up here and talk about my own vulnerability and my own powerlessness. But what that did was put me in the middle of Africa to Goree Island, the door of no return, in a holding pen, marched down a gangplank into a hole of a ship for a 4-month cruise.
Wow.
And I surmise that our ancestors had that same sense of powerlessness. We be going, boss. Some didn't make it from the interior. Some didn't survive the prison camp. Some didn't survive the whole of the ship, and some didn't survive when more enslaved people went to South America than North America. Let the record show. And Central America up through Mexico.
Correct.
And fewer came into the US of A. Charleston was a hot spot. New Orleans was a hot spot. Annapolis, DC area was a hot spot. Again, it was all based around agriculture and around maritime. Maritime.
That's what it's
And so I think that once I got into that space of powerlessness, I know I went up to Baltimore and I went to the Blacks and Wax Museum, North Avenue, John Hopkins, no gift shop is selling hot Mountain Dews on the curb, but buses are wrapped around the building on North Avenue to get into the Blacks on Wax library. Yes, a couple of hands were off the mannequin, somebody's ear fell off, the sign was bent over, but I think the reason that buses were coming from Ohio and coming from Virginia and North Carolina, because that's our experience. In spite of it all, the lights are still on. Do y'all hear me?
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
In spite of it all. And then you go to some facilities that are steel and glass and all beauty, but they are as sterile as going into Anne Arundel Medical Center. Oh, the soul is gone. Are y'all listening?
Amen.
Oh, yes, I hear you. I hear you. Yes.
Yes. And I'm just talking about a tale of two cities. And so I think it's that whole authenticity and language and so forth. But even on one of the tricky turns while we were over there, 4 of us was trying to get on a train. And 2 made it on and 2 didn't. And the police said no more. And I tried an intervention saying, hold on, we this. And over there, they don't want to hear that. When we say the train is full, the train is full. I'm speaking broken English. They speaking Wolof and French. But my guide intervened and got us back together. I'm trying to put y'all on location on the train.
This was a okay. Wow.
And then once we got on the train, every stop it made, more people got on. Nobody got off. And so even on the train, we getting pushed into it. And I got my bride with me. And every time another group come in, they're loud, they're tall, they're pushing, ain't no excuse me, ain't no may I. They bum rushing on the train because that's the last thing smoking.
Yeah.
Are y'all following?
They trying to get on. They packing in. I've been there.
Y'all with me? I'm talking about powerlessness. I'm talking about powerlessness. And so at some point, somebody said, well, hey, Dina, why don't you take that seat? And then more people piled in on every time the door opened, and that would look like a good seat was getting further away. And so I had a guide, and I said, sir, I don't know how to do this because I know excuse me ain't gonna get it. And I don't know what stop we're stopping on, but will you please do what you gotta do to get my bride and get us all back in the same section? I'm talking about powerlessness.
Yes. Foreign land, foreign country, foreign land. I hear you.
Yes. Listen, and then when we get to our destination, the other cabs we were in had the name taxi written on it and a lighted bubble on the hood. It was a gypsy cab station. Now we all been around the hood enough, East Baltimore, 2 taps down. We really don't want a real cab driver. Y'all been there or seen the movie.
The hat, baby.
Yes, so we get in the cab and then they already beefing over the fare. And this guy wrote down everything that I thought was a back alley, but it was a street. Again, I'm just trying to get accustomed to where I am. It's not a back alley, it's a street. And a couple of times the turns were so tight, it was a standoff. Who was going to back up? Who was going to yield? So on these sandy streets, the cab got stuck. It was a party of 4. And so the cab driver, gypsy cab driver, say, y'all got to get out and push. So my 2 local guys got out. Dina looked at me like, what you going to do? And I said, I'm going to sit in this cab and hold your hand. I'm talking about powerlessness. Are y'all still with me?
Amen.
I'm talking about powerlessness. And so the brothers got out and started pushing the cab out of the sand. But the guy was speeding so fast, he couldn't stop the cab till he got on hard ground. The brothers that got out of the cab were chasing the cab to try to catch up. Now, I'm talking about powerlessness.
Wow.
Yes.
Think you made the right decision, brothers.
Yes, can you imagine that if I felt like Minnie Mouse and let somebody say you need to get out there and push, but my spirit said, no, Vince, don't know what's going down, and I'm sticking with my woman, and you or her or anybody else can call me what you want. But can you imagine if I was one of the pushers and the cab driver took off at 50 miles an hour down dirt streets, dirt alleys, and I'm running with local guys. My guides, they were all fit. One was a boxer, one was a musician. I'm closer to 70 than 60. I mean, and they was whooping, trying to run the cab down. But I'm talking about powerlessness. Well, I'll fast forward. Everything worked out good. We got back to base camp. And so I asked my handlers, I say, well, what would have happened if they would have ran over a kid or a mama because they're speeding down the streets? They said it was going to be street justice. I'm talking about powerlessness.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Hey, look, ain't no give me your Allstate insurance card or your Geico card or show me your license and registration. It's a Muslim country. It's in the middle of the car. It's street justice, and they're gonna start with the cab driver. That's where the justice start at.
Well, audience, if you have loved having Vince Leggett on with us tonight, and you guys want him to come back in the future, please drop your one down there if you want him to come back, because you can see that he is not only is he a great historian, but he's a great storyteller, and he's a great all-around guy. So drop a one in if you'd like to have him come back with us sometime in the near future.
Amen, amen. And look, while they're doing that, Vince, I just want to thank you, man, for the knowledge, the wisdom, the wherewithal, and the willingness to share. Because stories get lost in our, you're in a foreign land and stories get lost in translation. We right here in America with each other and stories get lost. You know what I mean? So we need to do better as a culture. We need to do better as a people. That's part of what we're trying to do with this show, is to get the word out of people like yourselves that are seasoned and well-knowledge within the community that can lend a knowledge to everybody else that's in the community, so these stories won't die with us. Like you said in the narrative, the waterman, if we don't change the way we do things, then it'll die right here. So we can't let that legacy die right there. And we can't let your wisdom and knowledge die like that. So audience, I want to thank you and thank Vince. That's my words. Q, Ard, what do you got?
Oh no, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Vince, for coming on. Definitely appreciate your presence, and you narrated everything exquisitely indeed. So we definitely appreciate that. Q.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vince. Once again, we're going to have you on again in the near future. We've kind of run out of time tonight. I just want to remind everybody, next week's show, the full crew will be back, and we have a show that's going to be based around health and we're going to talk about cruising and the cruise next week as well. But thank you once again, Brother Leggett. You and I will talk a little tomorrow. I appreciate you, man, your time, your wisdom, your knowledge. And to our audience, we love you guys, man. We love you. And we're going to keep on bringing the raw to you like we did tonight. Like Vince brought the raw to you tonight.
And Vince, we're going to let you close it out, Vince. We're going to let you.
And I hope y'all are being raw and honest with us tonight.
We're going to let Vince close it out. And tell them about the website on the screen, Vince, while you're closing it out.
Right. Well, one thing I just want to thank you all. In our pre-warm-up, I told you, y'all got this thing set up like you're down Camp Canaveral somewhere down in Houston somewhere, getting ready for a moon launch. I mean, this is a wonderful platform, and again, it's powerful and it's empowering. And I look forward to coming back, and I want to pick up on that night in Dakar, Senegal, and maybe we can just dedicate a story more to an international perspective, because that's one thing that came from my trip across the Atlantic. I was always pretending to be a cosmopolite, a citizen of the world. I had to talk, but I didn't have to walk. But now I got a little walk now, because I done seen something. I haven't seen everything, but I've seen enough to see how transformative that experience was. And I want to share more with you all and your viewing audience. So stay tuned, stand by.
Awesome.
Definitely. Vince, I appreciate that, man, because, a lot of times we don't get the firsthand experience of somebody's experience in any part of Africa, and so I definitely would love for you to come back and share that experience Indeed, because we have to go for ourselves. It's hard to tell anybody what it is unless they've been there and they see it. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Great job.
Thank you all. You guys doing a great job.
Thank you. Once again, audience, visit blacksofthechesapeake.org to get more information about what Vince Leggett is doing in and around the community and throughout the state. And thank you for joining us again. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as we did. We get a first-hand look at the show because we right up close and personal. But it was a great show, and we want to thank everybody. Until next week, we'll say peace and love, everybody.
Indeed. Peace and love. And y'all check out that blacksofthechesapeake.org.
Yes, sir.